What is going on, everybody? I am back today to talk about a movie that I've really been looking forward to watching. And the reason for that is a while ago, I did a review for Todd Solondz's film Happiness. And that movie immediately captivated me. It was strange, bizarre, disturbing, but also beautiful. Just really incredible writing and a story unlike anything I've ever seen before that was very challenging. And I immediately wanted to dive in and watch more of Todd Solondz's work. And I did a full review of that. And recently on my Criterion Corner segment, I did a review of Life During Wartime, which was Todd Solondz's spiritual sequel to Happiness, which I didn't like as much as Happiness, but I still found a lot to appreciate. And I've been wanting to visit more of his work. And I've had a lot of comments on my videos highly recommending this movie in particular. After reading the plot description, I was immediately sold, excited to watch this movie. And the film I'm going to be discussing with you today is Welcome to the Dollhouse. Welcome to the Dollhouse is directed by Todd Solondz. An unattractive 7th grader struggles to cope with suburban life as the middle child with inattentive parents and bullies at school. So I was really excited to watch this movie, and I figured with Solondz being the director that it was going to be something I wouldn't expect, and I was completely correct with that. This movie was excellent. I really loved it a lot, and I think that it covers a subject that so many films have tackled, that coming of age story examining the awkwardness of being in middle school and being someone who's bullied and things that we've seen in film before, but does it in a way that's really abrasive and sometimes mean-spirited. And the humor is very similar to Happiness. There's a ton of dark comedy in this movie. Some of the dialogue towards our lead character is borderline offensive, very similar to things that I heard growing up in the 1990s. And it just really made me think, and it was hilarious, and it was jarringly funny in moments, but it was also really empathetic and compassionate in others. And I think Todd has a really interesting way of storytelling, unlike any filmmaker I've ever seen, and I'm really excited to talk about this movie today. So at the beginning of the film, we are introduced to Dawn, played by Heather Matarazzo. She is a 7th grader who goes to this middle school, and she is bullied horrifically. Her locker is terribly graffitied. Everyone in school treats her really poorly, including the teachers, for her seemingly just existing and trying to get by in day-to-day life. And she lives at home with her mother and father, who are pretty non-present in her life. They're a lot more focused on their own lives and the life of their youngest daughter. And she also has a brother that the parents don't pay a ton of attention to, but seemingly communicate with more than her. And so she lives this very strange, isolated existence. And she has this one friend who she spends time with in her backyard. It's like fort she's built in the backyard, and kids are incredibly mean to him. They call him queer slurs all the time, treat him really poorly. And there's one bully in particular, Brandon, at her school, that is just horrible to her, treats her absolutely awful. But through some circumstances, the two of them start to talk, and she starts to learn more about Brandon's life. And the entirety of the film is us just watching this character's experience in her middle school life and simply trying to survive and make it to high school. So as I said, I really liked this movie a lot. I think that it showcases everything that makes Todd Solondz a really special director. For starters, I loved the performances in this movie. I feel like everyone is so committed to these roles. And what's interesting is each character has such a distinctive personality. But what's funny about it is I went to school in a really small Midwest town in Ohio, kind of like country town where there were a lot of people that worked on farms that lived that very specific type of lifestyle. And there was a lot of hatred and bigotry, homophobia, xenophobia, all of these things existed. And I feel like Solondz does a great job capturing exactly what living that lifestyle is like, where you have all of these different groups of people from different backgrounds, majority white in this case, in this school, where they're uninformed, and so they say incredibly hateful things, and they treat people really terribly. And this movie came out, I believe, in 1997, and that I went to school in the 90s and early 2000s, and so seeing these interactions, it was stuff that I experienced firsthand, not only in the ways I was treated by people, but in the ways my friend group was treated by people. And so I think that there's something really accurate in the portrayal of these characters through these performances, that Solondz is able to bring to life a very accurate depiction of the hell that is middle school. And I think that it's really perfectly portrayed here. It's also very well shot. I really like the way he uses transitions in his editing, and I really love the way that he frames specific shots in his movies. There's so much attention to detail. This movie's also vibrantly colorful. There's a lot of really incredible use of color in this movie that makes the world very immersive and easy to sit down for this relatively short hour and a half runtime and experience this film. What I love so much about this is, and I talked about it a little bit in my Letterboxd review, is that Solondz is somehow able to explore his general disdain for the evils of humanity and people that are like typically just terrible towards one another, but also be incredibly empathetic and compassionate to people who are treated poorly solely for existing. And he grapples those ideas in a way that pushes and pulls you as a viewer. Our lead character experiences horrific bullying for no other reason other than she exists. Like, she looks the way that she looks and she acts the way that she acts because that's who she is as a person, and people just don't like her for it. And she's navigating her life and just trying to go to school and do the things that she's supposed to do, and she's treated like absolute garbage. And there's so many people in my life that I watched when I was going to school that were treated similarly solely for just being themselves, and kind of like the evil of children, and even like the misunderstanding and mishandling of situations by teachers. There's one teacher in particular here that I wonder if Solondz had a teacher like that when he was going to school, that he was like, oh, I've got to bring this to life on screen, because she's so unattentive and she's so just ignorant to her surroundings and doesn't really handle situations well. And I think that it's interesting he's able to poke fun at the kids, but also at the adults and like the parents, and just how aloof they are to their children's lives, and like the absurdity of the situations that arise with these characters, that obviously like it goes in a very dark, disturbing direction in the third act, but it's utilized similarly to Happiness to prove a point. And that's what I like about Solondz. Very similar to a lot of my favorite directors now, specifically Yorgos Lanthimos, who is able to create these stories that are meant to explore a very specific idea related to the human experience, and creating these very disturbing, abstract, weird worlds that just add to his point. And Solondz here, he's not going like full crazy. Like, everything that's happening here, it's believable in one way or the other, but it's done in a very comedic way that you're laughing at things you probably shouldn't laugh at. And the other thing I like is Brandon's character, who's introduced, who's very like mean and awful to other kids and treats people terribly. We learn more about his life and the things that he's experiencing and what can make him so hateful and awful to other people. And that's another thing I like about Solondz, is when he's looking at people's lives, he's trying to say, okay, people become the way that they are for a reason, and they develop habits and they develop behaviors typically because of how they were raised. Some people are just assholes because they're assholes, but a lot of times there are exterior circumstances that influence behavior, and Solondz examines that really well here too. And I just could not get over that for just an hour and a half, seemingly just coming of age comedy, that there was so much thoughtfulness in how these characters were depicted. And I just had a blast watching this movie. I can easily see it being something that I just revisit over and over again for years to come. And if you're interested in watching any of Solondz's work, I feel like this movie compared to Happiness would be a much easier like entry point into his work before you get into something as extreme as happiness. So have you seen Welcome to the Dollhouse? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was awesome. I loved everything about it. I just thought it was so well made. The performances were exceptional, and I thought it was very thought-provoking. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.